hppodcraft.com.
Judge, go ahead.
I repeat to you, gentlemen, that your inquisition is fruitless. Detain me here forever if you will. Confine me or execute me if you must have a victim to propitiate the illusion you call justice. But I can say no more than I've already said. Everything that I can remember I have told with perfect candor. Nothing has been distorted or concealed, and if anything remains vague, it is only because of the dark cloud which has come over my mind. The cloud and the nebulous nature of the horrors which brought it upon me.
Oh, so scary, those whores.
It is scary. That is a genius first sentence, I think. It gives you a feel that we've been in this room for hours, that there's other men here, that they're questioning. It's got an immediate sense of place and time.
Chad, I feel like that there is somebody else in the room with us.
Really? You do?
I do.
Who?
That would be me, Chad.
No!
Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a third host of the podcast this week.
Woo! Welcome, Andrew.
Hello there.
Andrew Leman?
Good to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Andrew has stepped down off of his mighty voiceover pedestal and joined us plebs as we discuss.
It's quite a magical transformation, I might add.
So, this week, I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
Oh, and I'm Chris Lackey.
And I'm Andrew Leman.
There we are.
And we are discussing the statement of Randolph Carter.
That's right, here on the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
hppodcraft.com. So anyway,
yeah,
the story you were saying in the beginning.
I was saying that I really like that first sentence. I like the whole first paragraph. I think it's neat. We know our fellow's recounting something. Clearly it was something that disturbed him. And some dark cloud has come over his mind. So that the horrors of the thing that he's recounting, he can't tell exactly.
Well, what we do know, it is about his friend, his good friend, Harley Warren.
Yes.
Again, I say I do not know what has become of Harley Warren, though I think, almost hope, that he is in peaceful oblivion, if there be anywhere so blessed a thing. It is true that for 5 years I've been his closest friend and a partial sharer in his terrible researches into the unknown. I will not deny, though my memory is uncertain and indistinct, that this witness of yours may have seen us together, as he says, on the Gainesville Pike, walking towards Big Cypress Swamp at 11:30 on that awful night. That we bore electric lanterns, spades, and a curious coil of wire with attached instruments, I will affirm, for all of these things played a part in the single hideous scene which remains burned into my shaken recollection. But of what followed, and of the reason I was found alone and dazed on the edge of the swamp the next morning, I must insist I know nothing save what I have told you over and over again.
So it seems like our main character, Randolph Carter, is talking about something that happened with him and Harley, where they had some kind of adventure.
Yeah.
Adventure?
Well, I mean, they've got equipment, they've got lanterns, spades, coil of coil of wire.
A coil of water. It's a water park. It was an adventure.
Yay!
When they go into the tomb, it's down a water slide.
Well,
Hilarious. A great man. Theme parks you could build if you only had the money.
Lovecraftian
theme parks. Don't think we haven't thought about it. Because we have.
I'm sure you have.
Rotting Wharfland, and the theme areas would be the Mad Scientist Laboratory, the Caverns of Doom, the
Plateau of Lang.
You would have the Plateau of Lang.
That would be great.
Snow cones.
I don't know if you'd have a lot of repeat business, though.
Yeah, there's just a room they all squeeze you into, and you sit there with a wax model of Lovecraft and feel uncomfortable.
So, Harley Warren, what's up with this guy?
We know that he didn't return from whatever this adventure was. They worked together on some sort of arcane studies. Lots of old crazy books, and Warren did take a special book with him in his pocket when they went on this adventure that Randolph didn't quite ever understand.
Yeah, well, there was this book that he had received, some ancient text written in a language that he doesn't understand.
Yeah, it came to him from India.
Didn't even recognize.
Not only couldn't understand it, he didn't even see it before.
And so Randolph goes on to admit that he was somewhat cowed into a lot of research he wasn't necessarily comfortable with by Harley.
Oh yeah, he said he was intimidated by Harley, and that he was just kind of an overbearing sort of person, and Randolph was a little meek. Yes. Kind of easily put in his place, so to speak.
I remember how I shuddered at his facial expression on the night before that awful happening when he talked so incessantly of his theory. Why certain corpses never decay, but rest firm and fat in their tombs for 1,000 years. But I do not fear him now, for I suspect that he has known horrors beyond my ken. Now, I fear for him.
Pretty ominous.
Yeah.
Pretty ominous.
What is this theory exactly?
He talks about his theory, but he never explains it in the story.
Yeah, Warren never explains it either.
He doesn't explain it because he's afraid that it's going to blow Carter's mind, right?
Well, that's what he says, is why he constantly puts Carter off by saying, you wouldn't get it, you're too nervous to hear all the details, it would drive you crazy. I can know it, but you're too either stupid or frightened or something to get it.
Yeah, some friend.
Too sensitive.
You're too sensitive, yeah.
He's looking out for him.
A bundle of nerves.
Yeah.
They're down on the Gainesville Pike, is what it says there. And Gainesville is Florida. It's in Florida somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I always pictured it as New England.
No, Harley Warren was a Southerner. Harley Warren was a Southerner, and Randolph Carter stayed with Warren for like 7 years, I think.
How do we know this about these two characters?
It's mentioned actually in another story in which Carter is a central character, The Silver Key. And The Silver Key sort of summarizes Carter's curriculum vitae, or whatever you want to call it. And it doesn't mention Warren by name, but it refers to a 7-year period where Carter went to stay with a man in the South, and they shared researches for 7 years, and at the end of that 7 years, they went into a cemetery, and only one of them returned.
Oh, my goodness.
So, it has to be Warren, even though Warren is never named. But
cool.
It did occur in the South.
So this story is actually setting up some characters that are going to recur in other Lovecraft stories.
Well, Randolph Carter pops up in quite a few times.
He's I think he's the most frequently reappearing, like, normal human being character in any of Lovecraft's
This is Lovecraft's Jack Ryan.
This is Lovecraft's Jack. It is. It's Lovecraft Jack Ryan, especially that story where he found the Nazi submarine.
So then,
well, Randolph's having a hard time because he doesn't really know what they actually did that night. Witnesses saw them walking with a bunch of gear, as we said. He only remembers the scene where they ended up. That's where his memory sort of starts.
The place was an ancient cemetery, so ancient that I trembled at the manifold signs of immemorial years. It was in a deep, damp hollow, overgrown with rank grass, moss, and curious creeping weeds, and filled with a vague stench which my idle fancy associated absurdly with rotting stone. On every hand were the signs of neglect and decrepitude, and I seemed haunted by the notion that Warren and I were the first living creatures to invade a lethal silence of centuries.
They start digging around in this swampy cemetery. As you've located it in Florida, I think that's the feel that it has. It's a wet place.
Cypress,
it's an overgrown
lots of Spanish moss hanging down everywhere.
Yeah. Sort of sickening, over hydrogenated vegetation. They uncover 3 giant stone slabs in the ground, and Warren makes a few calculations, and then they decide to pry the lid off of one of them. They do this, and of course a terrible stench emerges immediately.
Yes, noisome vapors, I believe is what they were.
Yeah. I love to get that kind of visceral detail. It's that part in the horror movie when one guy turns and throws up. Nobody else has a problem with it, but they pick the weakest guy in the gang, and he's the one that turns and throws up. After the smell has dissipated, they approach.
And now, for the first time, my memory records verbal discourse. Warren addressing me at length in his mellow tenor voice, a voice singularly unperturbed by our awesome surroundings. "I'm sorry to have to ask you to stay on the surface," he said, "but it would be a crime to let anyone with your frail nerves go down there. You can't imagine, even from what you've read and what I've told you, the things I shall have to see and do. It's fiendish work, Carter. And I doubt if any man without ironclad sensibilities could ever see it through and come up alive and sane."
Branney's going to do some characters.
Well, I was going to say, it's supposed to be a mellow tenor, so I'm sorry to have to ask you to stay on the surface, but...
So, Harley's plan is he's going to go down in the tomb, and Carter's going to stand up there, and they're going to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
So that Carter's not afraid to be by himself.
It's so polite of him, too, the way
so nice.
Yeah, well thought out. I mean, because that telephone gear, that's a lot of wire. If you're going to go to the center of the earth and back, that's a lot of wire. So Warren knew from the very beginning that he wasn't going to let Carter go down to the thing.
Right.
And brought him along. So he really just brought Carter to, help move the damn stone.
Yeah.
That's
true.
What a jerk. What a jerk.
He's totally that friend you call when you're moving. Remember that time we hung out 10 years ago? I have some arcane research I need to do. Someone needs to haul my wire. Well, so Warren unreels the telephone wire, and he, quite bravely, descends down the stairs.
Covered with goop and stuff and the stench and...
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
It's a frightening prospect.
It gets pretty creepy for poor Randolph because he's alone up there now.
In the lone silence of that hoary and deserted city of the dead, my mind conceived the most ghastly fantasies and illusions, and the grotesque shrines and monoliths seemed to assume a hideous personality, a half-sentience.
Yeah, I think Carter's being a little wimpy here.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
So if you were alone in the cemetery at night and your buddy had just descended into it,
And you were the only two people who'd been there forever.
I would rather be the guy on the waiting on the outside than the guy going in.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but see, the guy who's on the inside, he at least is in control of the situation because he knows what he's doing.
That's true.
You know,
That
he's
is true.
the guy who's sitting out waiting. All you can do is sit and wait, and that's murder, man.
Whistle.
Right.
That is.
And
terrible.
you don't, and he doesn't know what's going on.
He doesn't understand why Warren's gone down. He has no
Right.
idea when or if he's ever coming out again.
I think I was being a little harsh.
And you start to hallucinate when you're in a cemetery at night.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
can
true.
I can tell you that from personal experience.
Me too.
As can I. Yeah.
It's true.
I've seen some really creepy things in the cemetery at night,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty sure they were my imagination, or at least that's what I tell myself.
So he is sitting there for a while, probably starting to hallucinate a bit, and then he starts to hear some sounds from the phone.
Then a faint clicking came from the instrument, and I called down to my friend in a tense voice. Apprehensive as I was nevertheless unprepared for the words which came up from that uncanny vault, in accents more alarmed and quivering than any I had heard before from Harley Warren. He who had so calmly left me a little while previously, now called from below in a shaky whisper more portentous than the loudest shriek.
God, if you could see what I'm seeing.
I could not answer. Speechless, I could only wait. Then came the frenzied tones again.
Carter, it's terrible, monstrous, unbelievable.
Yeah. Oof.
Randolph keeps asking questions, but nothing's coming back.
No, he's not telling him anything except that I can't tell you what I'm seeing and
Yeah,
what's
it's
going
too
on down
it's
here.
too terrible.
It's too terrible.
Yeah. This is just like when somebody, says to you, I had a... forget it. And you say, what?
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 What is it?
Starts driving you crazy. It's like that, except horrifying.
And happening right now at the other end of the wire.
Yeah.
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 Well, then finally he hears,
Carter, for the love of God, put back the slab and get out of this if you can. Quick, leave everything else and make for the outside. It's your only chance. Do as I say, don't ask me to explain.
I think he's learned his lesson by now. He's not going to ask him anything. 'Cause
Right.
He's not going to tell him squat.
Well, but he does keep asking.
he does keep asking.
He does keep asking.
Well, I think it's that, someone telling you to do something and why?
Well, but it's also what he's telling him to do is,
seal him up in a grave.
seal him up in a grave and run
Yeah.
for his life. And it's
Yeah.
like, I came here to help you, and you're asking me to basically bury you alive. And that runs counter to...
Yeah, that's not cool.
No.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Well, then suddenly Warren from below breaks into song.
Beat it! Put back the slab and beat it, Carter!
Just beat it.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
that would be great. Actually, something about Warren reverting back into what he says is his boyish slang.
Boyish slang, yeah.
Yeah, lets Randolph know that this is serious.
But it also is what gives Carter the spine all of a sudden to say, no, wait a minute, let me help you. I will come down there and I will
Right.
help you. It's like that's what galvanizes Carter almost into action.
Yeah.
Almost.
Well, yes, and Warren says back to him,
It's nearly over now. Don't make it harder. Cover up those damn steps and run for your life. You're losing time. So long, Carter. Won't see you again.
then he gets really revved up on the end.
Curse these hellish things! Legions! My God, beat it! Beat it! Beat it!
So yeah, basically, Warren gets attacked by a lot of things, and they seem to be giving him enough time to say a lot before they
Yeah, it's
actually
amazing
kill
that
him.
he does manage to hold on to the phone and keep
Yeah.
describing all this while he's being
Well,
attacked by the things.
well, he's
So what do you think's going on down
Because
there?
clearly he's like fending them off with just the one hand
Right.
while he's holding the phone to his ear with the other hand, which is he might have made it out if he dropped the damn phone. We'll never
It's
know.
like some spoiled brat in the mall who just won't put her phone out of her ear. What? I'm trying to ring something up. Well, so Randolph sits there for a long time calling into the chasm.
Yeah,
and nothing.
and then
And then
Shall I say that the voice was deep, hollow, gelatinous, remote, unearthly, inhuman, disembodied? What shall I say? It was the end of my experience, and is the end of my story. I heard it and knew no more. Heard it as I sat petrified in that unknown cemetery in the hollow, amidst the crumbling stones and the falling tombs, the rank vegetation and the miasmal vapors. Heard it well up from the innermost depths of that damnable open sepulchre as I watched amorphous necrophagous shadows dance beneath an accursed waning moon. And this is what it said.
You fool. Warren is dead.
And that's the end of the story.
And that's
That is the end.
the end of the story.
So this monster speaks English.
Well, we don't know I think the working theory is not that it's a monster, but it's the guy whose tomb it is, who is in fact still alive.
Oh.
This is supposedly the tomb of a very great wizard who's been buried down there for quite some time. And Warren's theory is all about how some corpses never decay, that they wax firm and fat in their tomb for 1,000 years. So I think my take has always been the implication is that the guy who says "you fool, Warren is dead" is not a monster. He's the occupant of the grave, who probably has his legions of hellish minions down there doing whatever it is that they do down there. And when Harley Warren shows up, he sicks his minions on Harley Warren.
We do know from Return of the Living Dead that the minute a zombie gets a phone, he becomes instantly clever. There's that part where he says, "Send more paramedics, send more cops."
I just always assumed that they were like it was a warren of ghouls. Like it was some ghouls that lived down in there, and
Ghouls meaning
could be.
Later on in Lovecraft's story, they make a bit more of a prominent appearance, but they're basically subterranean humanoid kind of dog person creatures that feed on the bodies of the dead, and they have a whole society.
They have an elaborate culture actually with linguistics all their own and everything, and a character from another Lovecraft story, Pickman, becomes a ghoul.
Yes,
so a human being can turn into a ghoul,
which would make sense why it spoke English.
If it is in fact some former human now ghoul, or some ghoul who learned English from a human that it
all
encountered.
Possibilities. I like Andrew's
Sure.
though.
Well, because there is that clue dropped when he says what the studies are about, which is the preservation of these bodies.
Yeah, his unspecified theory about the persistence of life even after apparent death.
And that's a little similar to the case of Charles Dexter Ward. This has got a little bit of that going on too, where there's dead sorcerers, and I mean not that his body's preserved or anything like that, because it's not. But
they're looking at their essential salts, right? Their ashes.
Their ashes and things.
Well, I was curious what these experiences in the cemetery were when you hallucinated different things.
If they were hallucinations.
If they were, in fact, hallucinations. Well, I remember one time, it was with you, Chad, and Josh Bentley, a good friend of ours, and we were just causing trouble out in the cemetery back in Moline, Illinois.
Yeah, well, it's a small town. There wasn't a lot going on, and so we used to just kind of haunt the Riverside Cemetery out there.
Yeah, a lot of people would go out there
No reason.
Make out point. No, it was like kind of a make out point. So we would often terrorize people that would go.
Because it was so peaceful, or what?
Well, so we'd go to the cemetery and we'd wait around, and pretty soon some people would pull up to make out or drink or do whatever, and then we'd frighten them, which I think is kind of why
But was
they
it?
came.
I mean, was it because it was a cemetery, or was it like a beautiful park?
It
and
was
that's
both.
why you would go.
It's a
It was
very
both.
beautiful cemetery on
You
lots
get a
of hills.
view over the river.
Yeah, okay.
And it's nice, but not for those people.
Not for those poor people whom we terrorized.
Yeah, I mean we weren't vandals or anything like that. We never damaged anything, but
Just psyches.
just kind of throw rocks.
Which you continue to do to this day.
That's right.
Throw like little pebbles at their windshield, and they try and figure out
Yeah.
what's going on, and then just kind of make creepy noises and.
It was great to see.
It was like Scooby-Doo happening.
It was
kinda
was
was.
like that, but it was.
Kinda was.
I say 9 out of the 10 times it was a couple making out. The guy would abandon the woman immediately. So many times we'd scare them, and the guy would just go.
That's because he'd heard of the Zodiac Killer, and he thought you were him.
Yeah, in retrospect, I mean, they probably did literally fear for their lives.
Right.
But so while we were out there goofing around, sometimes maybe we'd get scared ourselves.
Oh yeah, of course. Your brain's thinking about ghouls and creatures and ghosts, and
Throwing
things.
pebbles and
throwing pebbles.
Well, I remember seeing. We were standing there looking, and I think it was probably just headlights hitting the cemetery. But I was like, look, those gravestones are glowing.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah, and they were.
They're getting more luminescent, and then it's fading away.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. Something terrible's happening.
Yeah, I remember that. That
Driving, that's what was happening.
Yeah, somebody's car lights were,
Yeah.
hitting them, but they were so far away that we couldn't see them doing anything but reflect off of the tombstones.
And did the tombstones have your names engraved on them?
Oh,
That'd be awesome.
And I remember one time that we saw, it was a black shape with arms of flying, flaying about wildly, and we ran out of the park, or out of the cemetery, and these other kids saw us running out, and then they went in, and a few minutes later they came running out. Do you remember this?
Was it a bag?
It was
a pole.
It was a bag.
Oh, awesome.
It was caught on a bush, and it was in the wind, and it looked like these arms, and it made this noise, which our brains had twisted into being like like that, but it was rustling plastic. That's all it was.
Worst part of that story, approximate age of all parties involved was like 20.
Yeah,
we really should have known better.
We were pretty old. No, it was more like 18.
Right, that makes a difference.
Yeah, I think we're still teenagers, I hope. But Andrew, you had said that you had seen some kind of creepy things in the cemetery.
Oh, yeah, but that wasn't a hallucination.
Oh, no. So backing up for a minute, you guys like this story?
I do. Oh my God, yeah. This is this in my opinion is the first of the true. When I think of a Lovecraft story, this feels like this is when he first really steps into it. It's got the old books. It's got trying to uncover secrets and sanity blasting things and death. And
This is definitely classic Lovecraft mode. And it introduces a character, Randolph Carter, who will appear several other times and expand on Lovecraft's universe. My only objection to it as a story is that it's not a story. It's an episode. It's a brief description of a thing that happened, but it's not a story in the sense there's no plot or arc or anything like that. No. So it's a lovely piece of writing, but I wouldn't say that it's a story.
Right.
In it being just that episode, it seems almost dreamlike. Would that perhaps have something to do with the origin of the story?
It would have something to do with the origin of this story because it is in fact inspired by a dream. Well, let me
as were many of Lovecraft's
almost every single one of his stories seems to be inspired by a dream. But let me before I go into that, the story was written in December of 1919. But wasn't published until May of 1920 in The Vagrant. But it wasn't...
Which for Lovecraft is a really short turnaround time.
That's not bad.
Because a lot of his stories weren't published until decades later.
Yeah, some of the ones we've talked about...
Not until after he died. But he had a dream, and this is actually a recreation of that dream. And he talks about it in a letter to Gallimore. It was a dream about him and Samuel Loveman, who is a friend of his.
You had a friend named Loveman?
I know, Lovecraft and Loveman.
That is a wrecking crew.
Which is pretty awesome. And Loveman actually had this extensive library, and Lovecraft often thought that there was all these secrets. And, I think in his mind, he really kind of exaggerated the importance of this library and liked to think that there were all these arcane secrets and things like that. This is a dream where they go to a cemetery and Loveman says things, you wouldn't understand it. I can't explain it to you. All of those things. And one of the really sad things, the part in the story where he says, you're too weak of conscience. What does he say again?
Yeah, you don't have the constitution for this.
Yeah, you don't have the constitution for it. This is a quote from Lovecraft's letter and what he actually dreamt about, what was said to him. At any rate, this is no place for anybody who can't pass an Army physical examination.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
And that's his old sort of shame that he wasn't able to...
Yeah, he didn't pass the examination. Because Lovecraft tried to get into the National Guard and didn't pass the exam. Yeah. And this was a dream, So obviously, this story is...
But that's what Loveman said in the dream. Loveman didn't ever say that
to
Lovecraft in real life.
He never really said that, no.
Because that would be really rude.
That would be really rude. But in his dream, Loveman says that to him.
Yeah, so that's Lovecraft's own guilt talking to him.
Oh, yeah. And I think it kind of says a lot about his relationship with Loveman, their friendship. I think probably he thinks he's a little domineering and...
Well, the relationship between Warren and Carter is, who knows what psychodynamics are going on in that relationship. He describes Warren as saying he always dominated me and sometimes I feared him. And yet he sticks with him for 7 years, sharing his researches, but only up to the point where Warren will let him in on stuff. Warren is sitting there reading books in languages that Carter doesn't even understand or recognize. Right. He's totally dependent on Warren for, what are we doing and why are we going into this cemetery? Right. And no, don't just do what I tell you. And here's the phone. And so it's Loveman. If I'm correct, and I may be wrong, but I think I'm right in saying that Loveman was Lovecraft's only gay friend.
Oh.
And Lovecraft was, sort of, he hated everyone. So I think he was just as homophobic as he was racist. But he was also, just like he hated Jews but married Sonia
right.
Green, he hated gays, but Loveman was his gay friend. And I don't know whether, the sort of self-conflicted dynamics of his relationship with Loveman, who's the inspiration for Harley Warren,
Right.
may have something to do with the nature of the relationship between Warren and Carter and this sense of, it's what are these two single men doing living together for 7 years and reading creepy old books.
Wow.
And then, so I don't know.
I didn't know.
Maybe I'm making a lot more of it out, a lot more out of it than there
that's
really needs
interesting.
to be, but that is a thing.
Samuel Loveman was not openly, but...
I know. I think he was, in fact, pretty openly gay. I mean, certainly for the time. I think he was...
Wow.
And I think it's one of those things where everybody just, agreed to pretend it wasn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think Loveman, made too much
Of a stink about
effort
it.
to hide the fact. But at the same time... anyway, that's my understanding. And like I said, I could be dead wrong. But I believe that is the situation.
I hear a lot of people sometimes talk about whether Lovecraft was gay or not, like closeted.
Yeah.
And he obviously he had an issue with his mother, and he had a very short-lived marriage, which didn't seem to go very well.
And spent the rest of his time apparently alone.
Alone. But nothing in his writing or his letters ever really indicated that he had any kind of conflict about his sexuality or anything like that, right?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, nothing that he committed to paper.
No.
There's no real reason to think that he was.
Yeah,
it's just the absence of any mention to the contrary is what leads to the speculation. But there's no real reason to think that he was gay.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of irrelevant.
It's utterly irrelevant,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's... But there's, I mean, when somebody's romantic life is a mystery, people will
Absolutely.
Right,
make up
exactly.
details to suit themselves.
Whatever's interesting.
Well, and I believe Randolph Carter appears in a number of other stories from other writers.
Oh yeah, other writers.
Oh, yeah.
pick
I
them
know
up and
that
run
in
off
that
of
first
them.
collection of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comics, I think it's the first collection, they have a story in the end of it. The protagonist is Randolph Carter.
And I think partly the reason other writers have glommed onto Randolph Carter is because he's pretty transparently a stand-in for H.P.
Right.
Lovecraft himself. Randolph Carter is just an alter ego for H.P. Lovecraft.
Now, I know that there are a number of short film adaptations of this story. It's very
There are.
filmable. It's got a nice framing device. It's got dialogue.
That's the thing. The other thing I was about to say is that this is, as I recall, this is one of the earliest stories where Lovecraft uses, dialogue to any degree. This
Absolutely.
features people actually speaking to each other.
It's almost shocking in a way because his writing style is so antiquated. When the characters start speaking and you realize they're speaking in somewhat of a modern dialogue,
saying "beat it."
it jumps out
It's
of
like,
the page.
wow.
It's almost laughable in a way, but at the same time, it does have the desired effect of being, oh my God, this guy's really in trouble. It's really frightening.
I think that might be one reason why it has appealed to numerous filmmakers because there's quotable dialogue in it.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
what other? I know of the one prominent one that sticks out in my mind is the Testimony of Randolph Carter,
Right.
directed
Never
and
heard of
written
it.
by Andrew Leman.
Oh, that.
But what
Right.
else has been?
Well, there's, like I said, there's a number of short films out there that people have
I
adapted
see.
this, and a lot of them I haven't seen. I know that Randolph Carter as a character is in The Unnameable, which is a horror movie
yes.
from the late 80s.
Unnameable 2 is called the Statement of Randolph Carter.
Yeah, but Randolph Carter is actually in The Unnameable, which is a story by H.P. Lovecraft.
Right, that's
So,
another story.
And those two, the Unnameable films,
bear little resemblance.
bear a little resemblance to what the original story is.
Right.
I actually like those movies as straight up slasher, kind of fun
Horror films.
good monster in them and that sort of thing, but not as usual, not
Not
very faithful
Lovecraftian,
to
really.
No, not
in
at all.
any stretch of the imagination.
No, but The Testimony of Randolph Carter. When did you guys make that?
It's funny because I was looking at it again recently for no particular reason, and astonished by the fact that we made that movie 22 years ago.
Whoa!
Wow.
We shot that movie in 1987. It was a college project.
You guys-
and it was.
Sean looks very young in there.
Sean looks very young in
really
there.
surprising.
We all look really young in there. Yeah, it was because he looks young because it was a long ass time ago.
It was 22
Who
years ago.
are you guys talking about?
Sean Branney.
Sean Branney.
It feels like I've heard him during this podcast.
Ah,
What were you shooting with? 1986.
We were shooting on VHS videotape on a home deck that weighed like 80 pounds, and we had to tote everywhere.
Right.
Great big ass camera.
And then did you have to edit with the 2 decks?
We edited on an incredibly linear twin tape deck system.
Yeah,
and
there
one of
you
the
go.
reasons, the movie is long, horribly, horribly long and slow. I know that. Everybody knows that. One of the reasons, and I'm not going to defend that, but I will explain that one of the several reasons why it's long and slow is that we were editing on a linear twin tape deck system where once you've made an editing decision, that's it. You're stuck
don't
with
wanna
it.
go
You
back.
cannot go back.
Yeah.
Right.
The other really good film adaptation of the statement around of Carter that comes to my mind is it's part of Out of Mind, which is a brilliantly good Canadian film, which cross-cuts between sort of a recreation of Lovecraft himself talking, as and they film it in the style of like a 1930s. It's Lovecraft sitting in front of a microphone talking about his own work, and then it intercuts between that and a modern day Carter Warren story, where and at the end of the movie, the modern day Carter encounters Lovecraft himself, and it's actually kind of a touching. I'm touched right now. It's kind of a touching imaginary encounter of Lovecraft encountering his own alter ego out in some nebulous dream-like condition. It's brilliantly well made. And
I have to see that.
You haven't seen it?
You haven't
No.
seen
Great.
Out of Mind?
It's
I
great,
haven't.
Chad.
It's really good.
You've got to watch Out of Mind. It is a great, great thing.
Watch it with me, folks.
Yeah, you must all
put links to it
immediately
in the
go
show
get
notes.
Out of
In
Mind.
the
and
show
watch it.
notes.
It's great.
So let's talk quickly about the new project. What are you working on right now?
Whisper in Darkness.
The Whisperer in Darkness. After The Call of Cthulhu, which we made about 4 years ago, we are now working on the next mythoscopic film adaptation.
That's correct.
And we're doing The Whisperer in Darkness. Sean and I we're working on the script for. We've been hammering that out for a long time, couple years. And finally, earlier this year, we settled on a draft that we both are quite happy with. And we are now up to our eyeballs in pre-production. Mm-hmm. Cameras roll about 1 month from yesterday, I think. We start shooting in Vermont on September 22nd.
It's very exciting.
That's very exciting.
We have the first read-through with the full cast tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Oh, so this isn't a silent movie.
This is a talkie. We are setting this one, like we did for Call of Cthulhu, we're setting this one in the year in which it was written, which is 1931. And in 1931, sound had come to the movie, so we are doing this one with spoken dialogue.
Nice.
It's still going to be black and white. It's still going to be in mythoscope, but it will have all talking, all dancing, all singing.
And who is directing this film?
Sean Branney, my
Sean Branney.
cohort
Again,
colleague in
for some
arms.
reason, I feel like he's...
I feel like I've heard that guy's voice today.
Yeah.
Shall I say that the voice was deep?
Ladies and gentlemen, our reader today has been Sean Branney.
Sean Branney.
Well, that's all I've got.
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap up this week's show. I want to thank Andrew for joining us.
Thank you so much.
My
It's
pleasure
so
entirely.
awesome.
Thanks for having me.
And also, thank you so much for all of your readings that you do.
I'm
I'm
forward to doing more.
Yes.
Oh, yes, you will be
But
doing more.
I look forward to doing some that are not set in Dreamlands.
Yes.
nothing wrong with Dreamlands, but some of those names really sneak up on you. It's like,
Oh,
what
I
the
know.
who? It is written on the brick cylinders of Cadatharon. God damn it. Cadatharon. That one took me by surprise.
So, what are we reading for next week?
And next week is The Terrible Old Man.
Oh my goodness, what's that about? Do you think?
I'm guessing it's about a fish that wears a fedora.
I'm already terrified.
It does sound terrible when you put it that way.
Well, that's all we've got for today's show. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
I'm Chris Lackey.
And I'm Andrew Leman, and this has been the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
Here at hppodcraft.com.
hppodcraft.com.